I was born into a world where humans and Pokémon coexist. At 18, I finally got the chance to search for the shiny Metang I had dreamed of, and this mountain looked exactly like the Metagross mountain from my past life. If I could find it, I'd gain an incredible Pokémon and become seriously powerful. At the foot of the mountain, I overheard a couple chatting at the Musashi and Kojiro ramen shop. They mentioned how someone had recently challenged a silver metal monster up on the back mountain, only to get soundly beaten. Seizing the opportunity, I offered to pay for their meal in exchange for details. Enduring the awkwardness of playing third wheel was worth it, as I walked away with precise directions. Once I reached the back mountain, I threw 2 luxury balls into the air to summon Lucario and Arcanine. Lucario stood tall and majestic, nodding solemnly as he used his telepathy to assure me we could count on him. Meanwhile, Arcanine let out a proud, boisterous howl, grinning like a returning king. Lucario knelt on one knee, placing a palm to the ground to sense the surrounding aura. His powers extended easily for a kilometer, mapping out the terrain in his mind, while Arcanine sprinted ahead with his nose low to the dirt. Less than 15 minutes later, Lucario excitedly alerted me that he had located our target. Following his lead to a cliff edge, Lucario pointed down into a deep ravine. I shouted into the valley, calling out the metal monster. Moments later, a bright silver creature with a disc-shaped body, stout arms, and sharp golden spikes at its joints hovered out from the depths. Its metallic body gleamed dazzlingly in the sunlight. While typical Metang are bluish-green, this shiny variant was pure, brilliant silver, spanning nearly 1 meter in diameter. My eyes met the creature's dark red pupils. I declared my challenge, stating that it would become my Pokémon if I won. The silver Metang nodded expressionlessly. I recalled Lucario to give Arcanine his turn. As Arcanine stepped forward, his Intimidate ability flared, but the Metang's aura remained entirely unaffected. I realized then that its ability was Clear Body, meaning its stats could not be lowered. The Metang struck first, its right claw glowing as it launched a metal claw straight toward Arcanine's head. I commanded Arcanine to hold his ground and unleash a close-range Will-O-Wisp. The claw landed, but 3 dark purple flames instantly burst from Arcanine, swirling together and exploding against the Metang to leave it heavily burned. Capitalizing on the moment, I ordered a flamethrower. A torrent of orange flames blasted from Arcanine's jaws, slamming the Metang into the cliff face and leaving visible scorch marks on its metallic body. Suddenly, a blue glow enveloped Arcanine, lifting him 30 centimeters into the air and disrupting his attack. Caught off guard by the telekinesis, Arcanine panicked slightly, paddling his legs in midair. Realizing how talented this Metang was to pull off such a move while burned, I instructed Arcanine to break free using Flame Charge. Enveloped in fire, Arcanine charged forward through the air, slamming hard into the Metang before it could dodge. The impact sent the silver creature crashing back into the rock wall. Without giving it a moment to recover, I ordered an extreme speed attack. Arcanine leaped from the cliff face, glowing bright white, and struck the falling Metang in the blink of an eye. The explosive impact knocked the wild Pokémon completely unconscious, leaving swirling spirals in its eyes. I pulled out a luxury ball, enjoying the fact that its higher comfort level would help build our bond faster, even if it cost a fortune. I tossed the black, gold, and red sphere toward the defeated creature. The silver Metang turned into a beam of red light and was sucked inside. The ball landed and secured the catch instantly without a single shake. I picked up the luxury ball, exchanged triumphant looks with Lucario and Arcanine, and held it high to celebrate catching the shiny Metang. Just then, my Pokétch began to ring. Just as I captured the silver Metang, my Pokétch rang with a call from my father, Leon. His round, handsome face completely filled the screen before my mother, Wen Hui, promptly elbowed him out of the frame. Seeing them together always reminded me how much Dad had filled out over the years. Dad piped up from the background, asking when I would be home to discuss some big news. He excitedly explained that the demolition payout from our old shop had finally come through, and they wanted to open a new breeding house with a fruit tree yard in Jubilife City. Mom quickly shattered his grand vision with a single punch, pointing out that the required renovations would take about a month. Jubilife City was the economic and technological heart of Sinnoh, making land there exceptionally expensive. Even after tallying up my parents' savings and the demolition money, I wondered how we could afford a property with a full yard. When I voiced my concern, Dad casually mentioned we could borrow the rest from my great-uncle Bethlehem, a famous Pokémon stylist in Jubilife. Upon learning the shortfall was around 30 million yen, I paused, realizing my parents were elite breeders, and I possessed breeding skills of my own. Supporting their dream made sense, so I agreed to the plan before wrapping up the call. Suddenly, a mechanical female voice chimed in my mind, announcing that a system was binding to me. It triggered a selectable main quest regarding the breeding house and granted me a new player gift pack. Setting the system aside for a moment, I treated Metang's injuries with medicine and headed down the mountain to the local Pokémon Center. At the counter, Nurse Joy greeted me with her signature sweet smile. When she saw the silver Metang resting inside my luxury ball, her eyes widened in surprise. She praised my capture, noting that this particular Pokémon had sent countless trainers to her clinic and was fast becoming the dominant terror of the back mountain. Chansey patted its chest reassuringly as Nurse Joy took the ball to finish healing my new partner. With a quiet moment to spare in the waiting room, I opened the newly bound system interface. The beginner gift pack bestowed upon me a super rookie physique, an appraisal eye skill, and a random Pokémon item lottery ticket. Checking my personal panel, I noticed my physical attributes were drastically boosted, reducing move damage taken to a fraction of a percent. My skill list included master-level charisma, intermediate command, intermediate breeding, and intermediate energy cube crafting, along with some basic cooking and ancient language skills. The system presented a main quest focused on expanding our breeding house to 100 satisfied customers, alongside side quests involving my mother's wishes for my personal life and helping Cynthia's sister Verity surpass her legendary sibling. With no time limits or failure penalties, I accepted them all. Checking the item lottery pool, I was stunned to see Megastones, Z-Crystals, and even Master Balls available. Eager to see what I would get, I immediately used my single random item ticket. Using the item lottery ticket summoned a star-like chessboard interface before me. The shimmering light spun across the board before stopping on a round, transparent stone marked with red and yellow patterns. The system announced that I had drawn a Deontay evolution stone, leaving me completely baffled. I wondered where on earth I was supposed to locate a Deontay to actually use it. The stone entered my inventory and I pulled it out to examine its pinkish luster. I knew Deontay was a mythical Pokémon from Kalos, mutated from a Carbink. While rare, it was not strictly one of a kind. My best bet was to eventually search for underground clusters of Carbink, perhaps using an upgraded appraisal eye to spot a mutating specimen. For now, however, that goal would have to wait alongside my pending quests. I turned my focus inward, testing my newly enhanced physical capabilities. Clenching my fists, I felt a surging power course through my body. The super rookie physique was remarkable, making me physically formidable enough to hold my own against top fighters. My new appraisal eye also filled the void left by a Pokédex, allowing me to scan my Lucario directly. The system displayed his moves, including elemental punches taught by my grandfather, and rated his overall strength at the dojo level. Feeling my gaze, Lucario rubbed his stomach, signaling that he was hungry. I immediately set out to prepare meals for him, Arcanine and our new Metang. My grandfather had always taught me that a great breeder never skimping on ingredients or customized nutrition, a lesson I learned firsthand through the steep costs of raising my team. When I checked with Lucario, he seriously requested his usual extra spicy blend. Since rare spicy fruits like Lansat were hard to come by, I blended Pecha and Chesto berries instead, processing them into clear red cubes and adding seasoned powder. Scanning the batch with my appraisal eye confirmed a decent quality result. I also prepared suitable mixes for Arcanine and Metang, sticking to balanced flavors for our new teammate. Lucario tied on his napkin and began eating his energy cubes elegantly with a spoon. As he took his first bite, a system notification popped up, granting me 7 points of proficiency in energy cube crafting. Every single bite he took generated a new notification, rapidly increasing my skill points. Recognizing how annoying the constant chiming would become, I quickly accepted a prompt from the system to consolidate the alerts into total proficiency gains instead. After feeding my Pokémon, I borrowed the kitchen at the Pokémon Center to make my own lunch. As I chopped vegetables, cooking proficiency points continuously ticked upward in my mind. The system cheekily rated my final creation as a bowl of vegetable and egg noodles with too much salt, which I dismissively blamed on my personal preference for savory food. With Metang fully healed and retrieved from Nurse Joy, my primary goal for the trip was complete. I walked to the local station and boarded the train back home. I arrived at Celestic Station on the train from Rikai, wishing I had a flying-type Pokémon to make traveling simpler. Although Arcanine was fast on the ground and Metang could levitate, neither matched the convenience of a fully evolved Metagross or a proper aerial mount. Returning to Celestic Town in November meant stepping into a heavy snowfall that turned every breath into mist. Famous for its ancient shrine, rich history, and as the hometown of champion Cynthia, the small town felt warmly familiar despite my half-year absence. Stallholders called out along the bustling streets, selling fresh moo-moo milk and sweet honey alongside their Pokémon partners. As Lucario and I strolled through the market with skewers of meat, my longtime acquaintance Yumi snuck up behind us. She greeted us enthusiastically from her stall, where her Farfetch'd sat happily on a chair. Yume insisted on giving us a batch of freshly baked Jubilife muffins for my grandfather, refusing to accept any payment because of how much he had helped her over the years. Knowing how hard she worked despite being orphaned at a young age, I bought her entire stock of 10 muffins anyway, praising her culinary initiative. As we parted ways, my system chimed with a new side quest to investigate who was stealing berries from her orchard. I made a mental note to help her out tomorrow regardless of the lottery ticket reward. Arriving at my old family home with its modest bamboo fence, I spotted a plump Gengar happily devouring a bowl of my grandfather's signature beef noodles on the doorstep. Gengar clutched its bowl defensively when it noticed me staring, but Lucario translated its insistence that more food waited in the kitchen. I released Arcanine and Metang from their luxury balls to stretch their legs. Arcanine immediately darted toward the mouth-watering aroma in the kitchen at extreme speed, while the naturally cautious silver Metang carefully surveyed its new environment. Gengar casually pulled a bottle of iced cola from its shadow mouth to offer Metang a drink, leaving the steel type utterly baffled. Hearing the commotion, a sprightly, dark-haired old man in a padded coat stepped out from the kitchen with a bowl of noodles for Arcanine. I greeted my grandfather directly, announcing with a serious expression that I had returned home to learn breeding and cooking from him. The moment the words left my mouth, the system's mechanical voice chimed in my mind once more to notify me of a new side quest. To refine my skills and unlock the system's special dishes, I knew I had to grind my culinary abilities under my grandfather's strict instruction. Both breeders and chefs were officially ranked from beginner all the way to grandmaster. Elite chefs of master rank or higher could craft Pokémon dishes using rare ingredients that actively enhanced a Pokémon's stats, functioning much like specialized training. My grandfather was a top-tier breeder and a master chef, and the moment I asked to learn under him, his posture shifted into absolute seriousness. Sensing the tense atmosphere, Arcanine quickly grabbed its bowl of beef noodles and fled the kitchen without looking back. My request triggered a new side quest on my interface named Lion's Wish. The system noted my grandfather's quiet disappointment that neither his sons nor his grandchildren had inherited his craft, tasking me with preparing a dish that would thoroughly satisfy him before my parents opened their new facility. Taking up the challenge felt natural, especially with my parents taking on debt for their new venture. My grandfather studied me intently, agreeing that my motivation was solid and noting that I possessed far more resilience than my cousin, who had given up early on. He decided we would start with basic knife skills to test my fundamentals before I sat for any formal breeding certifications. He promptly summoned his Farfetch'd from the backyard, placing the intelligent bird in charge of inspecting my technique. He then had Lucario step in as a real-time translator for Farfetch'd's precise instructions. Left in the kitchen under the watchful gaze of Instructor Farfetch'd and a dutiful Lucario, I took up my knife and began processing mountains of potatoes and cucumbers. Farfetch'd used its scallion to poke my posture whenever my cuts lacked uniformity, forcing me to execute identical roll cuts and precise slices. As the hours passed, my culinary proficiency steadily ticked upward point by point, eventually earning a grudging acknowledgement from my grandfather, who declared my knife work barely passable. When I mentioned I needed to step away the next day to help Yum track down the wild Pokémon raiding her orchard, he frowned at her reluctance to seek help earlier and agreed to let me handle it before returning to my training. The following morning, I headed straight to Yum's apartment accompanied by Lucario, Arcanine, and Metang. When she welcomed us inside her compact home, I noticed her Farfetch'd was absent. She admitted that her partner was out guarding the fruit trees, and under gentle pressure from Lucario and me, she finally detailed how the wild thieves had been plaguing her harvest. With my team by my side, I assured her that we would get to the bottom of the thefts and secure her orchard once and for all. To catch the thief raiding Yume's orchard, I knew we had to start with its favorite food. When Yume confirmed that it targeted her pecha berries most of all, I immediately pictured the sweet pink peach-shaped fruit. I pulled out my portable energy cube maker from my backpack to blend a batch of sweet pecha cubes, drizzling them with a rich, sugary sauce to maximize their appeal. The irresistible aroma caused Yume to blush and swallow nervously, sheepishly admitting her huge sweet tooth. After sharing a quick taste with her and Lucario, we headed straight for her orchard on the outskirts of Celestic Town, where I released Arcanine and my shiny Metang to help. At the orchard, Yume placed the sweet energy cube at the spot where the thief usually appeared, while the rest of us took cover nearby. After about half an hour of patient waiting, Lucario's aura sensing alerted us that our target had arrived. Surrounding the intruder while it gorged itself on the treat, we revealed the adorable little Teddy Ursa with a crescent moon marking on its forehead, blissfully licking its sticky paws. Scans from my appraisal eye showed it was a young female with the pickup ability. I ordered Metang to gently restrain the wild Pokémon using telekinesis, preventing it from fleeing. Lucario tried asking the little bear about its parents, but it communicated that it had been alone for as long as it could remember. Unwilling to leave the stray unattended, I offered Yume the chance to capture it so it could eventually help guard her orchard once it evolved. She happily threw a Pokeball, successfully taming the Teddy Ursa on the first try. The completion of her request triggered a system notification, granting me another random item lottery ticket. We invited Yume over to join us for dinner that evening, promising that I would be helping cook under my grandfather's supervision. Back at my family home, Gengar returned from the market and pulled bags of fresh groceries directly out of its shadowy belly. I spent the remainder of the afternoon hard at work at the cutting board, rapidly grinding my knife skills as I chopped vegetables until Yum arrived for dinner. My grandfather examined the little teddy Ursa and offered to guide Yumi on how to raise it properly, reassuring her never to hesitate to ask him for help. Though I was still restricted to vegetable duty while my grandfather and his culinary expert Farfetch'd handled the main cooking, I stayed focused throughout the evening. Once we walked Yum back home, I finally had a quiet moment to open my system inventory and use my new lottery ticket. That night, after receiving a lesson on fire element cultivation from my grandfather, I returned to my room. On that cold winter night, I leaned back against Arcanine's soft fur, using him as a warm pillow while he slept soundly with his massive head resting on his paws. Arcanine was a typical dog that was rarely home during the day, roaming the town's suburbs before returning on time every evening to eat and sleep. Most locals in Celestic Town recognized him, though once we moved to Jubilife City, Lucario or I would need to keep a closer eye on him. After taking a shower, I pulled out the random item lottery ticket I had earned from the side quest and used it. The system chimed, granting me 3 rare Dragonfire berries. Although bitter and spicy, these highly nutritious berries could significantly boost a Pokemon's special attack when processed into energy cubes or poffins. Both Lucario and Arcanine loved spicy food, and I knew I could easily balance the bitterness by blending them with other fruits. Realizing how difficult Dragonfire berries were to purchase on the market, an idea struck me about cultivating our own trees to ensure a steady supply, though I decided to consult my grandfather about the idea the following day. Early the next morning, Lucario woke me up for our daily training session. Developing a proper training regimen was essential, especially for our newest team member, Metang. While I had no desire to chase league championships or fight legendaries, I felt a deep responsibility to help my Pokémon grow stronger. Metang had agreed to join us precisely because it recognized the strength in Lucario and Arcanine, so gathering baseline performance data was my first priority. I had Metang strike Arcanine with a full-power bullet punch, which barely registered against Arcanine's sturdy frame. Next, I tested its flash cannon against Lucario, who raised a protective blue aura shield to absorb the thigh-thick silver beam of energy. After having Metang run 10 laps around the yard to gauge its speed and stamina, I finalized its breeding and training plan. We would focus on its advanced psychic abilities and its steel-type meteor mash, while Lucario oversaw its physical conditioning, and I provided customized nutrition. With proper training and Dragonfire berry cubes, its future Metagross evolution could easily become a formidable dual-attribute threat. 3 hours later, I approached my grandfather while he was tending to his vegetable garden to ask about growing Dragonfire berries. He gave me an annoyed glare, explaining that Celestic Town soil was generally unsuitable for them. He detailed how they required loose, well-drained, slightly moist soil with 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight daily, noting that regions like Eternicity's forests or the northern mountains were far better suited. Surprised when I pulled out the actual berries, his dismissive expression shifted to quiet intrigue as he examined their exceptional quality. He agreed to keep one berry to attempt planting it around April or May, leaving the rest for me to use before briskly ending the conversation and ordering me back to knife practice. That evening, my father called again to check in on me. When I explained that I had returned home to study under grandfather and sit for the official breeder certification exam, he initially panicked, thinking I was forcing myself into it to help clear our family's debt. I quickly reassured him that I genuinely found culinary arts and Pokémon breeding interesting. Overjoyed at the news, he teared up, expressing how proud he was that I was stepping up to join the family business before rushing off to tell my mother. By my 16th day back in Celestic Town, my knife skills finally earned a passing mark from Instructor Farfetch'd, allowing me to register for the upcoming breeder assessment. With our new breeding house under construction and set to open in less than a month, I was ready to accomplish something big. Determined to earn my grandfather's approval, I decided to tackle making poffins, stepping out of my usual comfort zone with energy cubes. Since my skill panel previously mocked my efforts as Schrodinger's poffin, I knew I needed to practice more to gain experience. I chose cherry berries for the recipe, knowing Lucario and Arcanine loved spicy flavors and Metang could tolerate them. Half a month of intense knife training under Farfetch'd had sharpened my focus, though controlling the heat while stirring the fruit paste in cold water proved tricky. My first 3 attempts failed miserably, landing straight in the trash as unpalatable messes. Lucario watched with quiet sympathy, mentally preparing himself to eat whatever came next out of sheer politeness. Focusing intensely on the flames and adjusting my stirring technique, I poured the smooth fruit batter into molds and baked them until a delicious sweet aroma filled the room. Opening the oven revealed a batch of pink, cookie-like poffins. Scanning them with my appraisal eye revealed they were spicy, slightly undercooked, and slightly burnt, but still functional. Lucario took a brave first bite, his tall ears instantly twitching in surprise at how good it tasted. Every bite he took rewarded me with a wave of proficiency points, leaving me to wonder if his enjoyment boosted my experience gains. Arcanine eagerly devoured his share, while Metang approached the unfamiliar treats with extreme caution, well aware of my past culinary failures. Pushing past its skepticism, Metang took a tentative bite and immediately lit up with joy, finding the spicy flavor delicious. As I celebrated my small success, my grandfather's cold voice chimed in from behind, accurately pointing out that my heat control was off, the sap was too thick, and my stirring lacked consistency. I was stunned by his sharp analysis, realizing he had identified the exact flaws listed by my appraisal eye without even tasting the food. He asked what I had learned from the process, and I explained how cooking and preparing Pokémon food shared core fundamentals like heat management, seasoning, and knife work. Satisfied with my answer, he noted that my attitude and willingness to learn were what truly mattered, even if my output still needed work. That moment triggered the completion of the side quest, rewarding me with a C-grade special recipe for smoked tangerine juice, capable of rapidly restoring physical stamina. My grandfather smiled slightly and offered to make whatever I wanted for dinner, bringing a fulfilling end to a long day of morning training, afternoon cooking, and evening breeding studies. Examining the C-grade smoked mandarin orange juice recipe in my special guide, I was greeted with a friendly system warning that its difficulty exceeded my current skill level, making failure highly likely. In typical fashion, it felt like another Schrodinger's cat situation. Standard tangerine juices were common enough for restoring stamina, but smoked mandarin orange juice was entirely new to me, meaning my grandfather could likely only offer general guidance based on his vast experience. Clicking into the step-by-step video, I watched an artisan lay fresh tangerines on bamboo mats to smoke them over pine branches for 3 full days, carefully turning them until the skins turned coal black and the insides thoroughly dried. She then soaked, simmered, and reduced the fruit before adding fresh rose petals. Taking detailed notes on the timing and process, I decided to purchase fresh oranges the following day to begin practicing, knowing that failure was simply part of the learning curve. Another half-month of focused training flew by, bringing with it the arrival of the new year. My parents, along with my Uncle Levin and Aunt Mizuho, all gathered back in Celestic Town, though my cousin Vera remained stuck at work. Unlike my easygoing father, Uncle Levin arrived sharp in a suit and tie, looking every bit the famous designer and tailor, albeit with a visibly receding hairline from his demanding work. When my father questioned why Vera couldn't join us, Levin explained that her archaeological team was excavating newly discovered inscriptions in Eterna City's ancient ruins alongside champion Cynthia. Reflecting on those ruins, I recalled their connection to the legendary time-space orbs, Dialga, Palkia, and the lingering remnants of Team Galactic in Sinnoh. Out of nowhere, my system interface chimed with a new side quest titled A Meeting Across Time. The objective asked me to encounter at least one of the Creation or Lake Guardians, Dialga, Palkia, Uxia, Mesprit, or Azelf, promising information on the location of a catchable mythical Pokémon as a reward. With my strong fondness for mythical species and a DLC evolution stone already sitting in my inventory, I accepted the quest without a second thought. Returning my attention to the family, I listened as my father drew wild comparisons between my shiny Metang and former champion Steven's signature Pokémon, absurdly concluding that I possessed champion-level potential. The conversation turned even more comical when Uncle Levin casually revealed he had personally designed contest outfits for both Wallace and Steven, leaving everyone stunned by his modest silence on the matter until he tearfully blamed his hair loss on taking too many high-profile orders. Uncle Levin's stay in town was brief, as he had to return to his shop within 2 days to fulfill a 5 million yen dress order for Princess Salvia. Before departing, he dramatically urged me to study breeding and cooking dutifully so my grandfather wouldn't lecture him, acting out a tearful goodbye until my grandfather silenced him with a cold glare. Speeding off in a hurry to escape the old man's stare, Levin accidentally drove away while leaving Aunt Mizuho standing alone in the cold wind, completely bewildered by his hasty retreat. With the construction of our new breeding house nearing completion in Jubilife City, my month of intensive study in Celestic Town drew to a close. On my final day off, I visited the Celestic Town Historical Research Institute, hoping to consult Professor Carolina regarding the space-time legendary duo and the Lake Guardians, but a guard informed me she had departed for the archaeological expedition in Eterna City. Returning through town, I bumped into Yume, whose Teddiursa and Farfetch had happily greeted me. The little bear tugged at my pant leg for treats, so I shared a handful of my latest energy cubes, earning another boost in my crafting proficiency. After Yume cheered me on for my upcoming intermediate breeder certification exam, I bade her farewell and prepared for the journey ahead. My parents and I boarded a high-speed train bound for Jubilife City, while my grandfather chose to remain behind in his beloved quiet town. Before our departure, he solemnly revealed that he had arranged for a renowned master breeder to tutor me for a few days after I passed my exam, insisting I must not bring shame to his name. My mind briefly raced through famous figures like Blue or Professor Oak, but I quickly ruled out such legendary names, leaving my grandfather smiling cryptically as Gengar waved goodbye with a handkerchief. Looking back from the train, I felt a strong urge to bring my grandfather to live with us in Jubilife City, expressing my determination to my father, who offered his enthusiastic emotional support. My mother reassured me that the old man was in peak health, a fact I couldn't deny considering he was still spry enough to chase anyone with his cane. Leaning back in my sleeper compartment during the 8-hour ride to Jubilife City, I reviewed my system panel to assess my progress. Over the past month, my skills had advanced significantly. My cooking and poffin making had solidly reached the intermediate level, my breeding proficiency had climbed past 5,000 points, and my energy cube craft sat near 8,000. This rapid growth was largely fueled by my grandfather's exhaustive guidance and his bottomless stomach Gengar, who gladly devoured every batch I made. The fruits of this training were equally evident in my team. Lucario had mastered extreme speed, Arcanine had learned Body Slam while entering the beginner dojo tier, and my Silver Metang had advanced to beginner senior tier, mastering Ice Punch, Protect, and Psych Up. With dedicated training and proper evolutionary items, Metang seemed only a month or two away from evolving into Metagross. Checking my phone as the train sped along, I noticed a barrage of frantic text messages from my friend Gold. He had been spamming me to log online and carry him in a game, pleading for help with hilarious urgency. Responding with a simple string of ellipses, he immediately messaged back, teasing that my silent response reminded him far too much of the legendary Red. To pass the time on the 8-hour train ride, I chatted with my friend Gold, remotely guiding him through a game level he was struggling with. When he asked why I had been offline for so long, I explained that I was busy studying cooking and Pokémon breeding. He was stunned to learn my family was opening a breeding house, jokingly calling me a rich kid until I clarified that we were taking on debt for the venture. A food lover himself, Gold asked about my cooking, so I sent him a dozen photos of my grandfather's delicious dishes. Drooling over the pictures, he promised to help spread the word about our new establishment. Though Gold was in Johto and I was in Sinnoh, we shared a close friendship, and I promised to treat him to a meal for his support. Putting my phone away, my father brought up a suggestion from my uncle about building our breeding house's reputation by creating a video account on the Ive Danmaku video network. The platform was headquartered right in Jubilife City, hosting official accounts for famous figures like Professor Oak, Professor Rowan, Red, and Green. I agreed to give content creation a shot, which immediately triggered a new system side quest named I Really Didn't Want to Be a Content Creator. The task required me to reach 1,000 followers in exchange for a random specialty dish recipe and a lottery ticket. Knowing how effective the system's high-quality recipes were, I accepted the challenge without hesitation. When our train finally pulled into Jubilife Station, I stepped out into the crisp air and released Lucario, whose impressive presence instantly drew admiring glances and photos from nearby travelers. My Uncle Levin picked us up in his new 7-seater vehicle and drove us 30 minutes to the eastern suburbs where our new breeding center was located. As the gates opened, I was completely speechbound by the sight before us. A wide paved road wound past sprawling grasslands, sandy areas, lakes, and even hills in the distance. When I questioned how we could possibly afford a space covering over 1 square kilometer, my father proudly compared it to Professor Oak's backyard, while my uncle revealed that the mayor of Jubilife City had personally supported the project to give the economic hub a world-class breeding facility. For a moment, I wondered if I had secretly transformed into a rich kid overnight, surrounded by luxury and endless luck. But remembering the 30 million yen debt my father took on to open this place quickly shattered that brief fantasy. In reality, I was just a culinary student facing a massive financial responsibility, working to help build our family business. Looking around the yard, I spotted a few wild Pidgey and Voodoo hiding among the trees, clearly wary of our vehicle. My mother explained that while perimeter railings were installed, gaps were left to allow local wild Pokémon to move freely. My uncle reminded me to keep a close watch on future client Pokémon so they wouldn't wander off, though he acknowledged my cautious nature. As we drove toward the main building, my uncle detailed the 1.2 square kilometer grounds, which were cleverly partitioned into foothills, forests, lakes, wetlands, and sand dunes. Touched by the incredible scale of what felt more like a full-scale breeding base, I listened as my father eagerly mentioned the possibility of future expansions. My uncle clarified that the mayor of Jubilife City had backed the project heavily, aiming to turn our base into a premier regional landmark. We parked near a charming central courtyard flanked by red maples and cherry blossoms, complete with vine swings hanging from sturdy branches. Ready to explore, I released my giant Arcanine and my silver Metang from their luxury balls. Arcanine immediately bounded toward one of the wooden swings, attempting to pile its massive body onto the seat. Fearing the frame would shatter under its weight, I quickly stepped in and held the massive fire type back using my physical strength. Arcanine tilted its head in utter disbelief at my newfound power, while my family stared in silent shock. My father scratched his head in confusion, wondering aloud why he hadn't developed such strength despite his own muscular build. He soon shrugged off his bewilderment and released his Machamp and Scyther, while my mother sent out her Ninetales and Gardevoir to settle into their new home. As the Pokémon exchanged warm greetings, Lucario signaled to Arcanine and Metang before leading them off for a private walk around the grounds. Turning back to the main complex, my uncle pointed out the connected H-shaped estate, which housed our living quarters in the center, a generator and storage room to the left, and a dedicated training field to the right. My father cheerfully added that the city provided significant discounts on facility maintenance, easing my worries about operational costs. The biggest surprise came when we visited the rear section of the building and found a fully functioning Pokémon Center, complete with a resident Nurse Joy and her Chansey. Miss Joy greeted us warmly, explaining that the League had assigned her to manage the health of both our future resident Pokémon and the nearby wild populations. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to us, Lucario was gathering Arcanine and Metang nearby, rallying the team with a secret plan to take on extra responsibilities and bring in support for our family's new venture. Uncle Levin departed shortly after dropping us off, needing to return to his shop just 30 minutes away by train. Opening such a massive breeding base had depleted our family's savings, leaving us 30 million yuan in debt to my uncle. Still, I remained optimistic, knowing that owning the land outright eliminated rental costs and offered immense long-term potential. If all else failed, I could always earn prize money and endorsement deals by competing in local tournaments. My momentary daydreaming was interrupted by my father, who caught me muttering to myself. I quickly covered by saying I was planning my video content, prompting him to shower me with his usual formulaic encouragement before heading into downtown Jubilife City with my mother to order supplies. Leaving me behind in a cloud of truck exhaust, my parents departed with Machamp and Gardevoir in tow, well accustomed to leaving me to my own devices. With 2 days remaining before my breeder certification exam, I turned my attention to my system quests, focusing on gaining 1,000 followers for my video account and securing our first satisfied customer. Sitting at my computer, I brainstormed video concepts, briefly considering scripted content involving the wild shinks roaming the hills outside my window. However, recognizing the risks of scripted drama and the danger of getting electrocuted by a territorial Luxio, I abandoned the idea. Browsing the Eevee Danmaku video network, I noticed that Pokemon-centric content, gym battles, and famous figures like Professor Oak consistently dominated the top rankings. Lacking a scriptwriter's flair, I realized my best path forward was combining food content with daily life at the breeding center, inspired by the culinary traditions passed down through generations of my family. My ambitious plans hit an immediate wall when I opened the kitchen refrigerator and found it completely empty. Between our fresh move and my previous failed attempts at crafting smoked mandarin orange juice, we were entirely out of ingredients and Pokémon food. I quickly texted my father to buy extra groceries on his way back, receiving a prompt picture confirming he was on it. With nothing else to do while waiting, I settled down to study alongside my parents, Scyther and Ninetales. Meanwhile, deep in the suburban neighborhood surrounding our base, Lucario, Arcanine, and Metang were actively scouting local trainers, well-dressed pet owners, and passing cyclists, zeroing in on their targets to launch their secret mission. Lucario's strategy was simple: showcase our team's strength to draw local customers directly to the base. Their first target was a well-dressed woman named Belle, who was out walking her Growlithe. Sent ahead as our ambassador, Arcanine sped down the road before skidding to a dramatic halt. Despite its massive size, Arcanine's friendly posture immediately disarmed Belle, whose husband happened to be a high-ranking police inspector familiar with the species. Dropping into a playful crouch, Arcanine befriended the smaller Growlithe and began demonstrating Flame Fang to help it learn the move. Watching from the shadows, Lucario realized their initial plan of purely flexing power had spiraled into an impromptu training session. Still, seeing the two Pokémon bond, Lucario left Arcanine to its lessons and took Metang to scout for wild Pokémon, hoping to demonstrate our dominance by taking on local battles. Adopting the role of neighborhood enforcers, Lucario and Metang quickly began patrolling the nearby hills. Spotting two wild Nidoran competing over a female, Metang charged in and delivered a swift ice punch to break up the confrontation, leaving behind 3 Oran berries as compensation. Lucario added a dramatic speech encouraging them to abandon romance and train at our base, though in its haste it completely forgot to give them our address. Metang then set its sights on a wild swarm of beedrill, charging headfirst into the nest and scattering the entire group with overwhelming force. Raising its arms in victory, the silver steel type roared with pride, thoroughly enjoying its display of power. Around 4 in the afternoon, the group finally returned home, and I immediately noticed fresh battle scuffs on Metang's metallic frame. When I asked if they had been out fighting, Lucario nodded in confirmation. Since Metang had always been eager to test its strength back in Celestic Town, I was not surprised, but I wondered where Arcanine had lagged behind. Right on cue, the massive fire type bounced through the front gates, its fur smelling distinctly of high-end gourmet treats. Realizing it had already fed itself, I gently warned Arcanine to avoid eating unverified food from strangers, but it merely wagged its tail and barked back happily, thoroughly convinced that the world outside was full of wonderful people. That evening, after my parents finished purchasing our supplies, my Uncle Levin and Aunt Mizuho arrived to join us. My uncle adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses and jokingly announced that they were here specifically to taste my cooking. My father and I worked together seamlessly in the kitchen, preparing a massive spread that included boiled beef, garlic sea bass, sweet and sour pork, kung pao chicken, candied sweet potatoes, and stir-fried pork with green peppers, alongside custom Pokémon curry for Lucario and the others. I filmed a video tutorial for the sweet and sour pork, carefully thickening the sauce to ensure the golden pork tenderloin looked perfect. The meal was an absolute triumph. My uncle praised my improved culinary skills, and my family devoured every last bit, with Arcanine and Machamp greedily licking their plates clean. Satisfied and stuffed, my aunt suggested my uncle and aunt stay over in our spare rooms instead of returning to the city center. When I asked about his grand dress design for Princess Salvia, my uncle praised her as an angel client who accepted his very first draft, saving his hairline from stress and promising to recommend our breeding center to her high society friends. The next morning, following our daily physical training, Lucario and the others mysteriously slipped away once again. Leaving them to their own devices, I sat down at my computer to edit the sweet and sour pork video, recording a crisp ASMR segment as I picked up a piece of crunchy tenderloin. I meticulously broke down the recipe, providing exact weight measurements for the ingredients and offering humorous tips on batter consistency, oil temperature, and sauce adjustments. I concluded the video with a lighthearted joke telling viewers to summon their parents to cook the dish for them before titling it Pokemon Trainer Job Guidance, Sweet and Sour Pork, and submitting it to the Eevee Denmaku Video Network. Satisfied with my first editing attempt, I closed my laptop and let the video go through the standard review process. Early the following morning, I prepared to head into Central Jubilife City for my intermediate breeder certification exam. I offered to bring Lucario and the team along, but Lucario politely declined, preferring to stay behind and explore the surrounding neighborhood with Arcanine and Metang. Knowing they would be stuck inside their Pokeballs for most of the city trip, I respected their choice, trusting Lucario to keep Metang's battle urges in check. Riding Arcanine to the subway station a kilometer away, I bade my fire-type companion a fond farewell before boarding the train into the heart of Jubilife City. Arriving at the city's main Pokemon Center, I presented my identification to Nurse Joy at the front desk, who processed my registration and directed me to wait patiently for the written examination scheduled for 9 o'clock. In the crowded resting area of the Jubilife City Pokemon Center, 11 candidates gathered for the monthly intermediate breeder examination. Being by far the youngest person in the room, I naturally attracted plenty of curious glances. Unlike the others who were frantically reviewing their notes, I sat quietly with my eyes closed, completely empty-handed. A towering man with a warm, broad smile named Dayu approached and struck up a conversation. Standing over 2 meters tall with arms thicker than my thighs, he was a retired professional fighter who was now pursuing his childhood dream of becoming a breeder alongside his Incineroar. Learning that my family was opening the Jubilife Breeding Center nearby, Dayu showed keen interest, and we exchanged contact details so he could consider applying for a job with us once he passed. Soon, a polished young staff member directed our group to the computer room for the 1-hour written examination. The test was divided into 3 comprehensive sections covering type matchups, evolution requirements, move inheritance, and health management, featuring specific questions about Garchomp's typing, Weevil's evolution items, and weather effects on Blizzard. I answered every question with total ease, completing the test in under 40 minutes. The system instantly displayed my score of 97, prompting an even sweeter smile from the invigilator as she directed me back to the waiting room. When the remaining candidates returned, they assumed I had given up early until the official results began filtering through. Out of the original 11 candidates, 6 had failed to reach the passing mark of 60. Dayu proudly announced his score of 73, while a confident woman in her 30s bragged about earning 81 points before exchanging playful bickering with him. Before the tension in the room could escalate any further, the staff member opened the door to announce that the final scores and rankings for the written portion were about to be officially declared. As the candidates waited in the rest area, my friendly chatter with Dayu stood out while two other women, Mizuki and Yuko, banded together to isolate a boastful woman named Meiyue, who acted as though victory were already hers. The tense quiet was broken when a staff member returned with the printed results, announcing that I had placed first with 97 points, followed by Mizuki at 88, Meiyue at 81, Yuko at 77, and Dayu at 73. Surprised by my score, Dayu blurted out a colorful reaction, while Meiyue indignantly challenged the results. The polite staff member accommodated her demand to inspect my test paper, leading Meiyue, Mizuki, and Yuko to review my answers in silent shock before acknowledging that my score was entirely legitimate. With no further objections, we advanced to the practical assessment room, where 5 Pokémon, an Electrike, Marill, Cherubi, Glameow, and Skorupi, were kept. The invigilator explained that we were to select one Pokémon based on our written exam rankings, care for it, and prepare an appropriate meal while judges monitored us on camera. Unfazed by the potential electrical hazard, I chose Electrike first, surprising the others who gravitated toward easier options. Dayu took the remaining Skorupi with a booming laugh, instantly intimidating the poor bug into obedience. Wearing insulated gloves and wielding a non-conductive brush, I sat on the floor and offered Electrike a high-quality Oranberry energy block to earn its immediate trust and cooperation. In the observation room, the judging panel, including Nurse Joy and an energy block expert, watched with deep appreciation as I flawlessly groomed the relaxed Electrike while its head rested on my lap. Moving on to the feeding phase, I thoroughly cleaned the exam room's energy block processor to prevent any lingering flavor contamination before hand-selecting the finest Oranberries available. 20 minutes later, the machine produced a batch of crystal-clear, near-perfect energy blocks that filled the room with a mouth-watering aroma. The rich scent made every Pokémon in the room salivate, prompting Dayu to grab his tempted Skorupi before it could sneak toward my station, while the amazed judges awarded my performance top marks across the board. The chaotic scene in the testing room forced a temporary pause in the evaluation as the panel of judges, including Nurse Joy, rushed in from next door. I had prepared several extra batches of Oranberry energy blocks, and the 5 local Pokémon, whose tastes were supposedly notoriously picky, were now happily devouring them alongside Miss Joy's Chansey, Dayu's Incineroar, and Mizuki's Glameow. As Incineroar greedily munched on blocks held in both paws, a continuous stream of system notifications flooded my mind before consolidating into a major milestone alert, confirming that my energy block crafting had officially advanced to the expert level. One of the senior judges, an elderly man named Yason, picked up a crystal-clear block and tasted it himself, his eyes lighting up as the explosive blend of sweet, sour, spicy, and bitter notes brought back fond memories of his youth. Praise from Yason, who revealed himself to be an old friend and former rival of my grandfather, triggered a new main quest titled The Student Surpasses the Master, challenging me to become an Alliance-recognized master breeder. For completing the intermediate assessment with a perfect score on the practical portion, the system granted me a batch of rewards, including beginner and intermediate breeder bonuses, alongside 3 random item lottery tickets. Before officially concluding the exam, Yason offered an insightful lecture to the remaining candidates, explaining that while catering to a Pokémon's taste is important, breeders should never let rigid preferences constrain their core strengths. Using my straightforward approach as an example, he inspired the group, prompting Mizuki, Yuko, and Dayu to frantically write down notes until I pointed out that taking a quick photo with a smartphone was much faster. The official results were declared shortly after, with only Mizuki and me successfully passing the intermediate certification. As we wrapped up, both Mizuki and Dayu expressed interest in applying for positions at our family's new breeding center, with Incineroar happily waving goodbye, clearly scheming to secure a permanent supply of my energy blocks. Receiving my intermediate breeder certificate from Miss Joy at the Jubilife City Pokémon Center, I carefully accepted the official ID card as Chansey cheered me on. My next step was to call my father, who immediately launched into a rapid flurry of words trying to comfort me in case I had failed. Once I finally managed to interject and tell him I passed, he became overjoyed, exclaiming with excitement before hanging up in a flash. I then phoned my grandfather, who received the news with his usual calm demeanor, confirming that he already expected nothing less. He mentioned that Examiner Yason was indeed an old rival-turned-friend and instructed me to stay near the breeding center to meet the mentor he had arranged for me. After Gengar squeezed into the frame to say hello, my grandfather ended the call just as abruptly as my father had. Boarding the train back to the suburbs, I walked the final kilometer toward our base while observing the quiet neighborhood houses. Along the road, I caught sight of my massive, broad-backed Arcanine standing alongside a stylish blonde woman and her smaller Growlithe. Recognizing me from afar, my Arcanine bounded over at full speed, its fluffy flaxen fur blowing in the wind, before trying to pounce on my shoulders. Utilizing my superhuman physical strength, I managed to hold back the eager fire type and mounted its back so it could carry me over to meet its new friends. Stopping outside a beautifully decorated villa, I greeted the blonde woman, who introduced herself as Aunt Belle. She explained that she had met my parents while they were out shopping and praised my skill in raising such an exceptional Arcanine. Having already looked into our background through her husband, the section chief at the police headquarters, Belle was well aware of my family's impressive credentials and was eager to foster a good relationship with us. Since Arcanine wanted to remain behind to continue playing with her Growlithe, I agreed to let it stay for the afternoon under the condition that it return home in time for dinner. As dusk fell, our team gathered back at the breeding center. Lucario returned safely from its outing, Metang received routine treatment from Nurse Joy, and Arcanine bounded through the gates just in time for our evening meal. To celebrate my official certification as an intermediate breeder, my family popped open a bottle of champagne, and my uncle raised his glass to lead a lively toast in my honor. After a satisfying meal, my father returned to his room while I leaned comfortably against my massive Arcanine to open the 3 random Pokémon item lottery tickets in my backpack. The system rewarded me with a metal coat, a powerful version of the speed enhancer, and a life orb. The metal coat was an ideal training tool for Metang, while the speed enhancer promised a permanent, significant boost to agility. Recognizing the life orb's immense power boost at the cost of a little health, I made quick decisions on how to distribute the items among my team. I handed the small blue bottle containing the speed enhancer to Lucario, who quickly drank the sweet liquid down in one gulp before rushing outside to test its newfound quickness. Next, I offered the metallic battery-shaped metal coat to Metang, who immediately sensed its dense energy and began crunching down on the metal core. Finally, I drew out the purplish-red life orb for Arcanine, repeatedly warning the eager fire type that this item was meant to be carried safely, not swallowed. Once Arcanine carefully curled its tongue around the gem, I settled in to check the Eevee video network, where my sweet and sour pork tutorial had suddenly gone viral, amassing hundreds of followers overnight and earning a wave of humorous comments from viewers praising my culinary skills. As I drifted off to sleep, my account officially crossed the 1,000 follower milestone, completing the first phase of my content creator quest. The system awarded me a B-grade crab roe lion's head recipe and a high-quality bottle of Moo Moo milk, which promised a permanent boost to physical stamina. Early the next morning, as workers in Machoki arrived to help finalize our building renovations, I hung up the official sign for the Jubilife Breeding Center. After posting a picture of our grand opening online to alert potential job applicants like Dayu and Mizuki, my father praised my efficiency just as our very first customer arrived at the front gates. To commemorate the official opening of the Jubilife Breeding Center, my family, my uncle and aunt, Miss Joy, and our Pokémon gathered below the new sign for a celebratory group photo. Miss Joy and Chansey then headed over to the newly established Pokémon Center housed right within our base complex. Seeing her depart, my father admitted his lingering anxiety over our mountain of debt and questioned whether the mayor's promised backing was real. I pointed toward the nearby center, reminding him that its presence would naturally draw a steady stream of trainers and wild Pokémon directly to our doorstep. Relieved by the realization, my father praised my sharp thinking, while my uncle and aunt bade us farewell, promising to recommend our facility to local contacts and students from the nearby Pokémon training school. Feeling confident about our long-term prospects, I updated my video channel name to Jubilife Breeding Center, listing our location and contact details to build our local reputation. Although our first official online bookings were still processing, the surrounding landscape was already thriving with local wild species, including Shinx, Buizel, Bidoof, and schools of Magikarp, living peacefully alongside us thanks to Lucario and Metang's previous presence. While Lucario and I were outside training, our very first guest arrived. It was Lily, a renowned Pokémon fashion designer hailing from my hometown of Celestic, who had traveled over after seeing my mother's message. Marveling at my silver Metang, she caught up briefly before entrusting me with the grooming care of her elegant Delcatty. Leaving my parents to handle upcoming job interviews inside the main residence, I led Delcatty into our dedicated, heated grooming facility. Delcatty purred contentedly as I gently combed its soft cream and purple fur and stroked its chin, enjoying the royal treatment. I carefully prepared a warm bath at 40 degrees Celsius, using specialized body wash to thoroughly cleanse its coat before gently drying its fur with a low-noise blower to protect its sensitive ears. Finishing the session with a light trim and final brush, I presented Delcatty with a mirror to admire its flawless look. Satisfied with its pristine appearance, Delcatty let out a happy meow, triggering a system notification confirming that my grooming skills had earned a delighted client. Not long after Lily settled in, her assistant Nami arrived in a flurry of frustration, dressed in a sharp business suit and complaining about being left behind at their hotel. My mother warmly diffused the tension by inviting them both to stay for lunch since our scheduled job interviews were not set to begin until the afternoon. Eager to check on Delcatty, Lily, Nami, and my mother walked down the corridor to the grooming room, where Delcatty was admiring its pristine reflection. Overcome by its cuteness, Lily rushed forward to nuzzle her cheek against Delcatty, earning a satisfied mark on my task progress counter, even as the cat used its paw to politely push her face away. Noticing how immaculate Delcatty looked, Nami gained the courage to release her own Glameow and asked if I could give it a full fur trimming as well. After confirming that Glameow preferred sweet flavors, I retrieved 2 portions of high-quality Pecha Berry energy blocks that I had crafted the previous evening, one drizzled with sweet syrup and the other soaked in moo milk. Both Glameow and Delcatty eagerly devoured the treats, earning me a substantial boost in Energy Q proficiency points. Astounded by the quality of my creations, Lily pointed out that such premium energy blocks commanded high market prices, prompting my mother to immediately begin planning our commercial production strategy and fruit tree cultivation. As I began bathing and grooming Glameow at 40 degrees Celsius, I carefully instructed Nami on proper water temperatures and low-noise drying techniques to protect sensitive Pokémon ears. Nami attempted to record the instructional session on her phone, though Lily jokingly pointed out that her camera was focused almost entirely on my face instead of the grooming process. After finishing Glameow's styling, leaving the playful cat performing gymnastics in celebration, and securing 2 more completed client satisfaction tasks, I asked Nami for a copy of her recording. Realizing the footage from multiple angles would make excellent content for my video channel, I thanked her as we finalized the video transfer. The slight surge in local reputation for my content creator quest was already bearing fruit. Alongside Lily and Nami's visit, my parents took 4 additional client orders that morning. 3 involved short-term boarding to teach specific battle moves and oversee a Pokemon's upcoming evolution, while the 4th required custom nutrition to help a Butterfree look its absolute best for the upcoming Jubilife Grand Contest. After I provided a custom batch of Blackberry energy blocks for the Butterfree, the delighted trainer left us our first official review, bringing my progress counter to 6 out of 100. After enjoying lunch together, Lily and Nami bade us farewell, leaving Nami quietly marveling to herself about how someone could be so skilled at grooming, cooking, and Pokémon care all at once. With my parents dividing the training tasks, my father handling move tutoring for a Cubone and a Crobat, I took responsibility for evolving a timid Phoebus into a melodic. Earlier that morning, I tested Lucario's speed, confirming that the powerful version of the speed enhancer had rendered its extreme speed move faster than ever. Meanwhile, Metang was steadily absorbing the energy from its metal coat, moving closer to its eventual evolution into Metagross. Leaving my team to enjoy their afternoon training, I finished editing my second video tutorial, titled Trainer Job Guidance Pokémon Hair Management, which featured dual-angle footage from Nami's camera, along with a light-hearted plug for our breeding center. After submitting the video for review, I opened a new project folder to design a specialized care plan for Phoebus. Having been traumatized by previous human interactions, the shy fish immediately hid behind the rocks whenever I approached, making it clear that restoring its confidence would be just as crucial to its evolution as raising its beauty condition. While I focused on Phoebus, job interviews officially began in the main office. Our first applicant was Mizuki, the short-haired intermediate breeder who had passed the written exam alongside me. When questioned about why she left her previous breeding center, she candidly detailed how she had secretly gathered evidence and reported her former employer for illegal overbreeding and using substandard supplies. While her fierce willingness to report illegal practices might intimidate other business owners, my parents admired her strong ethics and dedication to Pokémon welfare, warmly hiring her on the spot. Shortly after Mizuki left to pack her bags for the staff dormitories, the massive frame of Dayu ducked through the doorway, accidentally bumping his head against the frame. Stunned by his imposing size, my father blurted out a surprised comment, but Dayu simply flashed a warm smile and announced that he was officially applying for a breeder position. After my mother handled my father's abrupt reaction, she warmly apologized to Dayu, who only chuckled and took the comment as a compliment. Dayu explained that he was a former professional Pokémon boxer who had retired due to a leg injury that wouldn't impact his work. My mother quickly looked up his background, uncovering a stellar athletic record that included winning both the 16th P1 Fighting Championship and the 19th Pokémon World Martial Arts Tournament. Now 28, Dayu chose to transition to breeding out of pure passion for Pokémon. Impressed by his genuine love for creatures and his undeniable physical presence, my parents hired him on the spot, realizing that his formidable build would be a tremendous asset when dealing with any difficult clients. My parents spent the remainder of the afternoon interviewing a total of 12 applicants, maintaining high standards to ensure we built a dedicated team. Later that afternoon, I left fresh food beside the courtyard's 8-meter fish pond, allowing our shy Phoebus space to eat at its own pace while hiding within the hollowed artificial mountain. After briefly exchanging text messages with Dayu and Mizuki about their start dates, I browsed WeChat and noticed an enthusiastic promotional post from Ethan praising our new breeding center. While reading through the comments, I caught a reply from gym leader Latars, Serge, an old acquaintance from my past travels, who promised to visit us whenever he returned to Sinnoh. Switching over to check my online video channel, I saw that my second tutorial on Pokemon coat care was already gaining massive traction. Viewers flooded the comments section with praise for my grooming techniques, noting the exceptional quality of my custom energy blocks and bringing me significantly closer to my 10,000 follower goal. Bright and early the following morning, both Mizuki and Dayu arrived to begin their first day of work. While Mizuki moved her belongings into the staff dormitories, Dayu revealed that he had already purchased a 2-story home with a private courtyard just 800 meters down the road from our center. Shocked by his sheer dedication and speed, I reacted with disbelief, prompting Dayu to mention that he had already watched and liked my latest grooming video overnight. The tutorial had amassed 700,000 views in a single evening, surpassing my first video's performance. When Mizuki teasingly suggested that showing my face on camera would have easily pushed the view count past 1 million, I playfully dismissed the idea, insisting that I was strictly a technical creator before leading our 2 new team members on a complete tour of the facilities. After introducing Dayu and Mizuki to my team, Dayu took an immediate liking to my father's Machamp, admiring its impressive muscular build. Mizuki, who owned a Glameow as a household pet, revealed that she was actually the video commenter who had recognized the exceptional quality of my energy blocks. As we scrolled through the comment section together, we were stunned to find a newly pinned top comment from the former Kanto champion, Red, who praised my grooming techniques while expressing enthusiasm for my sweet and sour pork recipe. Pinning Red's comment to the top caused my channel's follower count to skyrocket, prompting a jovial Dayu to offer me a loan if our family ever ran into financial trouble. Grateful but reassuring him that our finances were under control, I led both of them on a comprehensive tour of our warehouse and training rooms. Passing through the courtyard, we paused to watch my father personally demonstrating tunnel-digging techniques to a Cubone, with both of them buried waist-deep in dirt. Moving past the main living quarters, I showed my new colleagues our fully equipped warehouse and 5 specialized environmental training rooms, demonstrating how to operate the environmental control panels and trigger safety alarms. Dayu's eyes lit up at the combat room, eagerly securing permission to use it alongside his Incineroar once their daily tasks were completed. We then ventured outside to familiarize Dayu and Mizuki with the local wild Pokemon population inhabiting the grounds. When Dayu instinctively reached out to pet a small Shinx, Mizuki and I quickly grabbed his arms to stop him, warning him that the species possessed a fiery temper when feeling threatened by large figures. Sure enough, blue sparks crackled along the Shinx's cheeks, forcing us to step back before it unleashed an electric shock. Continuing our walk toward the lake, an aggressive wild Buizel attempted to challenge us, only for Dayu to send out his high-level Incineroar. With a single Intimidate ability and a resounding roar, Incineroar instantly dazed the wild Buizel, securing a quick and effortless victory for Dayu.